Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and today's first impressions video we're looking at Airfix's Dogfight Doubles, F4F Wildcat and Mitsubishi Zero. So what we've got here is an Airfix gift set. It includes both of these aircraft and a display stand. It comes with 2 brushes, some tube glue and the paints that you need to complete the basic aircraft. I usually find that you need 1 or 2 more if you want to do anything a little bit more involved. It's 1/72 scale. It's all in a red box, although the kits are starting to age. They are still new toolish. Tells you nothing different on the sides. And then, as typical, we get tells you that it's a skill 2. It came with 2 flying hours, and then we get the 2 aircraft, which will both have 1 paint option, which is what's being displayed here. So, unlike most of their kits, this is a side opening box, which I don't particularly like. But there's ways of getting around that. If we look at the back of the box, we can see an understanding of what this is going to look like finished. Looks like we have a little decal there that tells us what it is, and then we've got the 2 aircraft. So let's take a look inside. Now I have to say, when you open the box, actually the inside is all in a tray, and I really like that. We've got a side opening box, not the best. I was all set for you're going to have to cut the top of the box open and make a flap. But the tray idea is brilliant. It means you can slide it in and out, keep all your parts together. That's fantastic. So as you can see, we have the decals here. We have the bag with the paints and brushes. We have a bag with the stand. And that has our sticker or decal in. That's interesting. The fact that it's not on the decal sheet or separate, but yeah. Then we have 1 bag with what looks to be our Zero, and 1 bag that looks to have our Wildcat. Some instructions. Oh, and randomly a slightly squashed canopy. You see the stress mark there? That's definitely been squashed and it is cracked, and I wonder why it's loose in there. Okay, could be interesting. So starting with our instructions, we have a colourful A4 stapled instruction booklet, normal type of layout for Airfix. We have a little bit of history at the front, and then at the bottom we've got the little for best results and please note. It says some paints maybe additional paints may be required to complete the model, and wash your parts. Assembly instructions, the usual. Make sure you study the instructions and follow the sequence. And then we've got our typical Airfix assembly key. And then we have advice for supervising adults. I'm not sure if I've seen that before. Maybe I just skim past it usually. It could be because there is paint and glue included in the kit, I'm thinking, because they're referring to the chemical toy, which the wording isn't great, but I'm guessing it's because there's more than just the plastic parts in there. And then you've got some safety rules for younger children, and washing hands after you've carried out and that sort of stuff. Okay, enough of that. Let's deal with the actual model. So we are starting with our Wildcat. And starting with the cockpit, we've got decals straight away right from the off going in there, so that's nice to see. I'm going to guess this is quite soft moulded, given that it's a 2015 tool, but we'll see when we get to it. We have a simple seat going in, more decals, and then we've got the dials on a decal as well. And we're building up what appears to be a sort of tub type construction. Clear part going in there, I think, into each part of the fuselage half, and then we're at an option of stand or not stand. Well, we've got a stand included, so I guess that's what we'll do. And we can drill our little holes there. It says 2 millimeters, but you're halfway along, so actually you're just opening that up with a little file. A rat tail file would do that. As always, Airfix now with their newer instructions showing you what was last done in red, so you can see what you're focusing on. I really like that. I think it's a nice way of working. There won't be any engine in here, I wouldn't have thought, but there looks like there's quite a bit of detail one way or another, which will be interesting. Then we've got bottom of the fuselage section around where the wheels raise into. And then if we flip over, actually we can do this now with my new camera angle. We are building up what looks like the landing gear to me. Yeah, quite a complex little construction going on there actually for a 172 fighter aircraft. A lot of tubular type construction going together, and then that glues in, and they're showing you in profile what that will look like fitted in. Quite a complex little thing, that. 2 fuselage halves going together. Then we've got an engine cap going in, spinner mount, and another engine going over the. Then we have the engine piece going over the top there, and then the cowl going round. So you will be able to see some of that detail. Again, that'll look quite nice painted up and given a wash and stuff. That's not bad at all. And we've got some alignment there for the cowling, which is good to see. Make sure that you've got those little elliptical parts all lined up. Very nice. A simplified tail construction, which I think actually looks like it's going to work well. You won't be able to pose anything, however. And then you've got the wings, and we've got the option of putting drop tanks on, so drilling out the holes there. Wings go on to quite short, stubby roots there, so how strong that will be interesting to see when we build it. But we do have a movable flap there, although it's not giving you the angles you want to set it at for down or what have you, which they do sometimes, or have been doing more recently, maybe I should say. Okay, then we have instructions for it with wings folded. Now obviously you're not going to do that on the stand, but it's nice that they have that folded wing option, so have a different wing route, which is probably why that's stubby, I would imagine, to allow for both options. And then you've got building up the wing in the same way, not putting a drop tank on, obviously, and then we have the wing being mounted. And that's going to look really quite nice. It might be interested in getting another one, so we can just do it wings folded. Interesting. And then you've got the little locking bar there that holds them into place once it's all folded back. So that's quite nice. Some good options in there, and what looks like a relatively complex little build for the scale. So we're back to mounting the wings here. Then we're putting the flaps in once the wings are mounted, which is interesting. And they're showing you how those flaps should look in the folded position, which is good. Then you've got wheels down, wheels up as an option. and we're using the same wheel, so you've got a full wheel that's going in there if you've got the wheels up, and some extra detail going on to the fuselage there. And then we have a pilot, and the poor thing has to have his legs cut off. Wonder which member of staff they chose to have his legs cut off. Yeah, so anyway, option of a pilot. Now obviously if we're having them on a stand in a dogfight, we'll need to put the pilot in as well. But we don't quite finish there. We have canopy, again, options for open and closed. So we've got different canopies. We've got the propeller going on, the arrestor hook, which can be extended or not, so that's good. And then finally we build up the drop tanks, which we add in under the wings, and that, I suspect, gets us to our paint instructions. So let's just have a look at that. Okay, we've got 8 paints shouted out. Upper and lower fuselage. We've got some nice decals going on the propeller there, which is nice to see, but only really fairly basic stenciling, as well as the main decals going on, but looks very nice. Quite a few decals one way or another, I guess, showing you the paint stripes that are required for the arrestor hook. Yeah, all very nice. Shall we have a look at the parts of that before we carry on with the instructions? So the bag for the Wildcat has 1, 2, 3, 4 sprues and our clear parts, which are all there and attached, which is good to see. If we look at the fuselage first, it's got some nice detail on it. Feels like this is a hard plastic. I'm just checking where it was made, because they are now starting to manufacture in the UK. So on the box it says made in India and the UK. It's quite oily. You can see the sheen of the release agent on there. So it will need a good wash. We've got the little seat there. The panel lines are probably a little bit heavy, but if you're brush painting that, they'll look great. If you're airbrushing, not so, but you'll still get away with it. And one of the ways to dumb it down is to, rather than doing a wash, is to do a pre-shade. That's a good way around that if you think these are a bit heavy. But there's a nice level of detail, plenty of fastener detail around there. We've already got I hadn't noticed this in the instructions, but the tail wheel's already moulded into place. And then we've got some of the interior parts, the little locking latches for the wings have folded back. So yeah, not much wrong with that, I don't think. Next we've got the wings, and again you can see the release agent on that. There's lots of it, so these will definitely need a good wash. Some of that framework that we saw, it looks a little bit chunky, but cleaned up should be okay. Most of that's going to be inside, as I remember. Then we've got our root options for the wings there. And the wings themselves look nicely detailed. There's raised detail on there, as well as the recessed. I actually couldn't see it, but I can now feel it. There's some really, really tiny fastener detail on there. It's really lovely. Yeah. And as ever, you can just pause this to have a look if you want to study these a bit closer. Okay, more wing sections. The tail, we've got that engine bulkhead, which has got all that nice detail on there, and more of this quite complex construction we saw that goes around this area. Our pilot, including his legs at this stage. Our flaps have got some nice texturing on them, as does the tail. And then we've got the floor pan for inside the cockpit, a little gas bottle moulded in there. Detail on the wings is lovely. Yeah, shouldn't be too bad at all. I'm not worried about sinking the pilot, you ain't going to see it. Detail around the tail looks really quite nice. Apologies if you can hear a slight buzzing noise. That's my next door neighbour who's decided to get a power tool out now I'm filming. Good of her, isn't it? Engine here, it's a bit flashy. The propellers, nicely done. Unfortunately, sprue gates are on the bottom of the blades, but actually that's the thickest part and easier to clean up, so I'm not as fussed as I could be. Our drop tanks and our cowling. Painted up, given a wash, that will look really nice, I think. Okay, our clear parts now. They are, well, slightly detached that, but they're not the best clear parts I've seen Airfix do. They're not really crystal clear, and in fact this one is quite foggy, and our distortion not great, but I've definitely seen worse. So I've seen better clear parts, but painted up they'll look the part, I'm sure. Returning to our instructions, we're now at step 1 of the Zero. Again, starting with the cockpit. Similar type of approach to the cockpit, I think, although it looks a little bit more simplified than the Wildcat did. Remembering this is an older kit, so it may not be quite to the same standard when it comes to the detail. Cockpit goes in, we've got some form of interior detail. 2 fuselage halves go together, and then the engine mounts on the outside of that. And again, this is similar sort of arrangement. We've got the spinner and 2 engine parts joining together. Depending on how well that's moulded, that should look alright with a wash. It's going to have a cowl on it anyway. Then we've got a section of fuselage going in. That's the upper section there, leading into the cockpit by the looks of it. The cowling goes on, single piece cowling. Then we've got an option, which is to cut the end of the wing off so that we can put a different part in for folded wingtips. Obviously, again, if you're using the stand, that's not really an option. And then we're putting the wings together, which are the more traditional type of wings. We've not got any wing supports or anything like that going in, so be prepared for some gap filling at the wing roots. Then we've got a hole to drill out, again 2mm for placing it on the stand. Tail goes together, again the more traditional biscuit fitting, and the tail section there. And we have a little cutout as well if we want to have the drop tank added. So flipping her over, we've got undercarriage being built up there. This time the tail wheel is separate. Building up the drop tank, which for some reason is having holes drilled into it. I'm not quite sure why that is. Then we've got the wheels being built up again in the sort of traditional manner, with these little mounting points here for the strut. Then we're building up the propeller in the spinner. A couple of extra details going on the aerial. Nice to see some geometry for the wheels. Then we have a pilot going in. He's not shown as an option, but clearly is. And then a canopy, which looks like a single piece canopy. Yeah, no options on there, as I can see. And that completes what already appears to be a much more simplified build to the Wildcat. So you can see in 4 years the distance Airfix travelled with their small 172 kits. Let's look at the paint scheme. So the paint scheme is for the beige green all over with the black cowl, and then we've got what will be silver, silver propellers with one having a black blade, or the rear faces having a black blade, I should say. Fair number of decals one way or another, because there's some large markings on there as well. Yeah, and that is the instructions complete. So let's have a look at the Zero. So our Zero comes with 3 grey sprues and our clear canopy. So let's start by looking at the first sprue here. And I'm going to tell you again, this is the hard plastic. This just happens to be sprue A. And we've got the underside of the wings there. And actually they're not bad. Panel lines, again, debatable. You've got some detail in the gear bay. And then we've got our fuselage half, which has actually quite a nice level of detail on the inside and no ejector pin marks. So that's not too bad, actually. Form all looks right. We've got our 2 engine pieces and they look fairly nice as well. And these are our optional wing tips. And you can see on these edges there's no detail on them at all, unlike on the Wildcat. Yeah, so it's a little bit more basic than the Wildcat, but perfectly okay, bit of fun. As we look at this one, we've got the other half, which has different detail, which is nice to see. They didn't just repeat it. We've got the cowl there in a big space of its own, which has a whopping great seam on it. That shouldn't be there, surely. Don't think that should be there. No, that's definitely some heavy seam. The wheels look a little bit basic, and we've got our pilot who looks suitably oriental, and little cockpit bits and pieces. Yeah, it's not quite the same quality as the Wildcat, but it's not bad at all, actually, for a little kit. Wing tops, got some texture in there. It's okay. Plenty of panel lines to add a little bit of interest. Drop tank looks a little bit soft moulded, but the hard plastic seems to help somehow. The propellers look quite basic, but look, we've got gates on the middle bit and not on the blades. So we've got some ejector pin marks there, but they might be hidden once built up, actually. You can just see those there. Now we've got those 2 strange little holes in the drop tank. So what they are, I have no idea. I'm sure someone can tell me though. If you would, that'd be great. And little seat that's got a bit of detail there if you choose not to put the pilot on. Yeah, that's not so bad. Let's have a look at the canopy. So a single canopy somehow seems to be a bit clearer than the Wildcat one. Let's just have a look at the distortion. I think the distortion's better than the Wildcat as well, though there is some, particularly around the curves, as we would expect. It's going to be a little bit tricky to paint. The raised detail is quite softly moulded, so it's going to be quite a bit of effort to get that painted, because you've got all these little rounded windows, all the corners are rounded, so it's a little tricky without paint masks. Might be worth seeing if we can get some paint masks to make life a little easier. But that's not a bad little canopy, that, actually. I'm not quite sure what the random canopy was. It's clearly a Wildcat canopy, but as you can see, it's completely wrecked, and I don't think should have been in the box. Okay, decals, next job. So these are cartographs, so we know they're going to be good. We've got Wildcat at the top and Zero at the bottom, and as you can see, more decals for the Zero, really. You've got lots of little ones here, and there's quite more stencils than it looked actually for the Wildcat. Everything's in register, colour is lovely, virtually no excess carrier film except for where you've got gaps. I think that really works really well. Yeah, nothing wrong with those. So because we're a gift set, we get some paints and some brushes, and brushes are always handy. And interestingly, the Humbrol black brushes that you get in gift sets, you can't buy from Humbrol. They're only ever available in a gift set, so they're not the green ones and they're not the orange ones. They're just the gift set ones. And actually, I quite like them. They're generally not bad brushes at all. So I use them quite a bit. We've got a size 4 and a size 0, both with protective covers. I gotta be honest, I tend to chuck the protective covers because you can damage the bristles trying to put them back on. But we've got 2 paint brushes, and I would say that will cover most of what you need. If this was your first model kit, you could certainly get away with those. The obligatory poly cement in a tube. I would like to see Airfix follow what Revell do and just put a smaller version of their liquid poly in. I think that would be a nice advancement, but cheap and cheerful, but it is functional. Then we get the paint, and I'm pleased to see that they have started getting rid of the hinge. They used to have a little hinge on, and when you open the paint, the hinge would flick it around and got in the way and part closed it. So these are much better. And you can see there's nothing wrong with these paints. Now, sometimes you can get a paint that's a little bit dried up and it's not its best. Metallics particularly. I'm just going to open this and see if that's the case. Not too bad, but it's a bit thick. What I would say is, in most cases, if the paint doesn't look alright, put some thinners in it, give it a good mix, and it should activate itself and be okay. Now, because this is a relatively new kit, these paints seem to be okay, although I'm going to look at this white. There's a little bit of excess there, and that looks quite dry. So let's have a look. No, just needs a good mix up. But sometimes if you buy them off eBay, you will find the paints have dried up. Unlike the tinlets, they don't last forever, these little plastic pots. But there you go, all the paints you need. They're in good pots, resealable. You can thin them and do exactly the same as their ordinary paint. It's very good quality paint, particularly for brushing, but you can thin them and airbrush them no problem. Let's have a look at this stand now. I've never had one of these Airfix stands before, and what we get is 2 sprue with the actual plastic parts on, and then we get which looks like a sticker to me. It's been a bit poorly cut, but just want to see. Yeah, so it's a little self-adhesive paper sticker which says Dogfight doubles F4F4 Wildcat Mitsubishi Zero, and you can see that it's been cut right on the edge there, so I think it should have been trimmed in the gap and has not quite been, but anyway, we might get rid of the Dogfight doubles bit and just take the text out, I don't know, but yeah, we get that, and then we get the stand itself, which has the base and this little Airfix logo that you can plop in there. But what you could do, if you didn't want to put Airfix in, you could just fill that and then spray paint the lot and it'd be fine. Then we have the 2 arms that stick out of there and there, giving one of the planes a little bit of height. And then you've got these little ball joints that somehow go together. There is no instructions for this, so that's going to have to glue onto that, I would guess, and then that goes into the bottom of the aeroplane, and then you've got this ball joint so you can position the aircraft. Okay, not difficult to work out. Nice little option. What I will say though is you've got some pretty hefty ejector pins in one side of it, so you might want to think about that. What are you going to do? Fill it? No, it's going to be hard to fill. It would be hard to fill unless, of course, you filled it all the way up or you swapped it out for something else. So there we have it. Airfix's F4F4 Wildcat Mitsubishi Zero Dogfight Double. What is my first impression? Well, I like the idea and the concept of having 2 aircraft on a stand, which gives you some form of action and animation. I'm a big fan of putting animation into a model where you can. So I really like the fact that you can do that, and you've got a little ball joint on the stand so you can pose the aircraft as you like. You can have the Zero pulling away after it's shot at the Wildcat, or vice versa, or you know, you've got lots of possibilities. Wheels down, wheels up, endless possibilities. I think it's a really, really lovely kit for youngsters, and I could see how they would enjoy building that 2 aircraft animated approach. I think works very well, and as a gift set, it's great for getting a fairly novice model builder could get into that. I would think if you built 1 or 2 little kits, this is a perfect sort of next step. Clearly the Zero is starting to show its age, but most of what you're seeing, the outside surfaces aren't bad at all, and you've got decent decals, so it won't look too bad. The Wildcat is certainly a better model than the Zero in terms of a little bit of detail and finesse. But again, most of it you're not going to see. You're only going to see the upper surfaces, but they have a bit more finesse than the Zero. I think both kits should build up without any issues. It's nice to see them in that lovely hard plastic that you get. I'm guessing the base has probably come from India. All in all, not a bad little kit, and something a little bit different. It's slightly bigger than a weekend project and a sort of in-between build, but actually what I've bought it for is to see if I can take this from being this sort of more basic style of display into something a little bit more interesting, get it weathered up and actually make it look like something a little bit more than was intended. So that will be my challenge when I come to build it, get some weathering done and try and get the very best out of these 2 kits. This one being 11 years old now, certainly showing its age a little bit, but I'm interested to see what can be done. I think it's a nice little kit. It's a great little project, no matter what your skill level. Hope that was interesting. Thanks for looking in. Enjoy your modelling, and I will see you very soon.